You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for August 13th, 2021. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where they have released the butter cow. It's The Professional Left with Drift Glass and Blue Gal. I got one thing to add to our notes.
I have one thing to add to our notes, too.
Happy anniversary, Dad.
Happy anniversary. I have the same thing.
Aw.
Next week, we will have been married for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
This podcast predates our
predates
marriage.
our marriage by a year or so. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
now, that's the tin anniversary. So if you want to send us
some tin,
don't do it. Just don't do it. Last night I watched Tin Star with Henry Fonda and Anthony Perkins in preparation for my anniversary. It turns out it's not the same. It's not that.
It didn't help you. No.
No, not at all.
No. Happy Fair Week, everybody.
Happy Fair Week.
Illinois State Fair here in Springfield. And the butter cow is there.
Is open for business. It's a
J.B.
butter cow
Pritzker
with a person hugging the
hugging
young,
the cow, right?
A young lad or lass hugging the cow.
Yeah.
In butter.
Which is charming. And there's
entirely
a contest.
In butter.
There's all kinds of stuff going on at the fair, okay?
There is. And you should read a lot of the stuff that's going on at the fair, Blue Gal, because
it's funny.
Maybe after we roll the credits, you can do this as a post-credit stinger.
Why don't I do that? Stay after the credits and I will read to you what's going on at the fair. All right.
We'll eat shawarma and talk about the racing pigs at the
racing pigs, piglets, I think. Yeah. Anyway, yes. I wanted to start off with a series of tweets that came out. One of them I wrote, but Brian Schatz, who is one of the senators from Hawaii, wrote a tweet this week that spoke to me. And it said, if you say, quote, "we are doomed," unquote, on this platform, you are not an organizer. You are just doing lazy clickbait. Get in the game. Everything is impossible until it's done. And I replied to that or retweeted that with the words that I often use, and many of you know them: chop wood, carry water, knit a hat for the homeless. Being a doomsayer doesn't make you sound smart. It's actually boring. And this was the week, when we started Monday morning. I woke up Monday morning and the headline was Code Red for Humanity.
Right.
Which turned out to be a 1.5 day story, which is so sad. I know people are working on climate change in the Congress and taking it seriously and wanting to provide funding. I think the president is serious about it, but it seems rather hopeless. A lot of the times, climate change is such a huge problem that individuals are paralyzed by it. And I totally understand that. But we got a reply from one of our listeners. Got a reply to this Chop Wood Carry Water tweet from one of our listeners named Matt. And Matt said, "It just fuels my already anxiety-prone self into a panic attack of existential dread. That's why I love listening to you guys. You give me confidence we will be okay one way or another." And I don't mean that in a Pollyannish sort of way. I do think that what Brian Schatz said, everything is impossible until it's done, is true.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from.
And I remember back when I was a commenter at the news blog, the late Steve Gilliard's news blog, there were a couple of people who showed up because it was back in the olden days, kids. Let me tell you a story about the old days of blogging, kids. Pull up a stump, grab a corncob pipe. I'll talk to you about it. Steve was a prolific blogger. He blogged like 2 or 3 posts a day, which was, enormous. And he was a student of history and had a very clear, blunt opinion about what liberals should and should not be doing and why we needed to destroy the right. And this was in the depths of the Bush administration when saying this was, a death sentence for your popularity and your traffic. But there was always a couple of people, and usually the same people, would show up at like 9 o'clock at night. And you could tell that they were drinking because their comments would get, there was no Twitter. This was the comment section. But it would always be, yeah, that's fine. But, we're all fucked. We're all doomed. This is all just a waste of time because Democrats are corporatists and blah, 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 blah. And it was so clear that, like, if you really think that we're all doomed and everything is hopeless, why are you spending all of your energy showing up here every fucking night trying to piss in everyone's, wine glass?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is these people have enormous energy that they devote to making sure everyone else feels like shit and believes nothing can be done. And that's when we just started shutting those people out because, like, clearly, if you really believed what you were saying, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
You'd be drinking yourself to death in some bar somewhere. Or you'd be burning out some other place. You'd be doing something.
They're doing it because they think it makes them sound smart.
Yeah,
and because it's attention, they get attention for it.
But such an enormous amount of energy and effort and time devoted to making people feel everything is worthless and hopeless. It's like, nah, there was a character like you on Gulliver's Travels, and I forget his name, but he was like, it was the cartoon, and his line was, "We're doomed. There's no hope. We're never going to make it." And that was his entire line. His name was like Gloom or Gus or something like that. But those people are they've got nothing to contribute to the conversation other than sucking your energy up and making sure that nothing will get done.
Right.
So shed those people. Now, the exact opposite of the doom merchant, the why bother, there's no point in doing anything, was, if I may, Mike Finnegan.
Yeah. Mike Finnegan passed away this week, and Mike was the founder of Mike's Blog Roundup at Crooks and Liars. He retired from that activity in 2011, 10 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he was going on tour with Bonnie Raitt, and he's a Hammond organ player, top of the line, session musician, amazing musician, but also very committed to liberal causes. And he and his wife, Candy, were just really good people. And we're so happy that you and I got married.
Yes.
Because he linked both of us all the time.
He did. He would say, and he'd write us. And he got us into go see Backstage with Joe Cocker. Which I thought was...
We met him backstage when he played with Joe Cocker in Chicago area.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. It was nice to meet him face to face. But just knowing him online, he was a great person.
Was.
And he lost his battle with cancer after a long struggle. And we are going to miss him. And his memory lives on. And when he retired from doing the Roundup, we're at this crossroads. Do we keep doing this? Because he's been doing it for years. Do we keep doing it? And I said, absolutely. And we will always call it Mike's Blog Roundup because it was his. So,
and the whole point of Mike's Blog Roundup, because he didn't have to do any of this. He was doing just fine as a session musician. And again, top of the line, everybody wanted him. This was his passion, and he knew John.
Yeah.
And musicians, know musicians. But the whole point of Mike's Blog Roundup is to look downstream of you and find smaller blogs, find little blogs, find interesting things that other people are saying. They're not going to make it into the big upsweep from the networks, and highlight those people every day, every single day. Yeah.
Share the traffic. Yeah. I mean, that's a very old school blog thing to do. We don't hear about that too much anymore, but
no.
Crooks and Liars is still committed to that, really sharing the traffic with smaller blogs and indie writers. Yeah.
Well, and now that this last week I have been doing Mike's Blog Roundup. And first of all,
I need volunteers to do this. So
yes, it is a labor of love, as all things that you do in this space usually are. And I loved it. I mean, it really rewires my brain in a delightful way to have to go out every day and look for cool stuff that nobody else is paying attention to or not noticing or is a little bit, off to the side. It was great. I love doing it. And if my wife wouldn't kill me, I would volunteer to do it even more often. But one of the things I do to find cool stuff that other bloggers are writing about that you might not have heard of is to go through my blog roll and blog rolls of larger blogs and see what's going on. And I got to say, the extinction rate of blogs over the last 10 years has been 90%.
Oh, yeah. And people don't update their blog rolls either. anymore.
That's the weird part, because I'm going through large blogs, people who've been doing this like you and I have for a long, long time.
Since the Bush administration.
Bush administration. And who have extensive blog rolls. And you go down the blog roll and some of them are sorted by recency.
Yes.
And you go past the first 5 and then you jump to 2012.
Yeah.
And it's just
5 years ago. Yeah.
Just dead blogs as far as the eye can see.
Yeah.
And people who just retired or got tired or have other things to do, who are still active, but in other ways, who got burned out. You and I are having a conversation tonight about Jon Stewart, who just, had enough. And
and we're also having a rather panicked conversation about Rachel Maddow, because she's renegotiating her contract. She's got one of the Emanuel boys, Ari Emanuel, who's, I didn't know Rahm had more than one brother, but Rahm Emanuel's other brother is an agent, and he's Rachel Maddow's new agent.
His name is Gummo, I think. Is that right? Zeppo or Gummo? I forget which. Yeah.
He's Ari. Yeah, it's Ari Emanuel.
Emanuel, yeah.
And a lot of people are saying, well, this is just a lot of talk. She's not going to leave MSNBC.
I don't know.
But I'm thinking she can have her multi-million-dollar Netflix deal if she wants one. Sure. That's not. Nobody's going to say no to her.
Well, and how many years has she been just doing this every day?
5-6 days a week. It's got to be exhausting. She's a human being. But you said in the car coming home from our mediocre Mexican. We've had a long day, folks.
Yeah, we had a power failure here as we were getting ready to podcast.
At 2 o'clock this afternoon, the power went out.
The power went out. Well, it went out and then came back on. Then it went out. Then it came back on. Like, oh, this is the end of the world. Okay, this is bad. But it was off for much longer than we thought. So we went out to a local restaurant, which had an hour and a half waiting period.
Yeah, so everybody had the same idea we did, which is let's go way out to the west side and eat where they have power. And
we're installing a battery operated system here, which the minute the power goes down, it will call this restaurant and make a restaurant. Make a reservation.
Make a reservation. Yeah.
But we had a mediocre Mexican meal at a restaurant that we used to serve very good top of the line food. Has changed hands.
Changed to a Mexican restaurant that the food was
Yeah, it's okay. It's it's nothing you haven't had before at every other styrofoam plate Mexican restaurant that you have in a small town.
Right.
And then we came home and started doing this.
Well, and let's thank youngest child, because she texted us. She stayed home and texted us when the power came back on.
Yeah, she did. But we were talking about Rachel Maddow and our dream cast. This is what we're what'd be really nice is if Joe Biden won by 70% and we all that's but NBC, which has been the bane of the existence of bloggers like us and frankly our democracy for a long time, has been the Sunday shows. One of the worst examples of normalizing lunacy and letting lies go and rehabilitating scumbags. Has been
endless Republican interviews.
Yeah. And never challenging a lie. Never pushing back.
Just is a toilet. Yeah.
And it has been that way for a very long time. And now NBC has a new president. And I would really like to see, this is not going to happen because they floated the idea of Jon Stewart doing Meet the Press. But I think you give Rachel Maddow Meet the Press.
Yeah, I do too.
And give her 4 specials a year and all the election night coverage she wants.
Yeah, if she wants election night, which she seems to love to do.
Yeah.
Then she does that. Yeah. But, anchoring 5 nights a week is just a lot of work. And she has a good staff that she trusts. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of work. And so I wish her well in her contract negotiations. Mm-hmm. I will watch her wherever she is. And that's that.
Well, I remember her from the days of showing up on MSNBC as a guest with her vest and her kind of spiky hair.
Yeah.
And, I just got done tending bar and just blowing the place away, because this was her major in school. This is her passion. This is her interest. But I know that she wants to do, based on her books, wants to do other things. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Her last 1 or 2 books ago, it was about the expansion of executive power and how that's been a fucking disaster for this country. Mm-hmm. So I know she wants to do bigger canvas things, or at least I assume she does. And she certainly has the clout to do it because there is nobody who can do what she does.
Speaking of people who work really hard, I mean, I want to thank Hal Sparks this week also.
Yeah. There's work and there's derangement.
I mean, he did extraordinary work this week.
I got to say, at some point, Hal, we're going to have an intervention. No, it was brilliant. It was great stuff. It's like, I can't imagine.
Let's explain. Hal Sparks watched most of the Mike Pillow Cyber Symposium live and talked about it. And it's on YouTube. If you want to go sit for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours and watch it, he was on watching it. And I can handle things like that through the filter of Hal Sparks making jokes about it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, no. But you wrote that, the cyber thing got hacked when a squirrel chewed through the wire. What a disaster.
It was so bad.
And someone on Twitter made a wonderful point, which was you never tell your marks when you're doing a con.
Right.
You never tell them, I've got the evidence that what I'm saying is true and I'm going to show it to you. And here's the event where I'm going to show it to you. You always say, I've got it, but it's under audit.
Right.
You'll get to see it soon. It's amazing. It's perfectly wonderful. It's the best thing ever. I've got absolute proof. It's coming.
Yeah.
Donald Trump knows how to do the con.
Right. The election audit is under audit. Really? That seems weird that would be true. But it was, I mean, my working title is the Very Screw Loose Telethon because it was so bizarre and dumb and hacked up in pieces. It was just such a clusterfuck. And this pathetic lunatic who bought himself this space and time, just
pathetic lunatic millionaire.
Yeah.
I mean,
who spent, not 3 days because he went for long naps and he got pulled off stage. And I think someone slipped him a note going, you are being sued right now.
Yes, right.
And Dominion is going to own your pillow company if you don't shut your gob.
The Dominion lawsuit is going ahead. Yes.
Yeah. But it was such a rambling, and I have a tech background. I do not have a tech background of current coding knowledge over the last 5 years. But I used to write code, and I used to write really good code.
And Hal Sparks does too. I mean, both of you were saying exactly the same thing.
Shaking our heads going,
you were saying what Hal Sparks was saying like a second before he did. I think it was just because there was a delay. Like, packets? Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me?
No,
and I don't understand any of it, but it did seem like we have all these numbers and data that we can put on a big screen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not what Mike Pillow is claiming it is.
No.
And it never will be.
Well, and the two MAGA guys.
Yeah.
Who've obviously been following this deranged presidency and post-presidency
detail.
For they're the Grateful Dead followers of Donald Trump. These
are
two
the
guys
tapes from the 70s.
Yeah, man,
right.
It was great until he turned electric, and then it ruined the whole thing. And they have their giant hats and giant beards, and they know everybody who's a fellow follower. Mm-hmm. And these two guys showed up on their own little YouTube thing going, this was just a nothing burger. This was
because they've heard it all before.
Right.
And Mike Lindell kept promising this is new, solid, irrefutable evidence of election tampering by the Chinese.
Right. And honestly, and he would break off into long, rambling complaints about being attacked in person
on an elevator.
Yeah. And dude, you know what? A pang of conscience does not count as an attack. Maybe you should look inward, Mike. I don't think there's any inward left. I mean, this really is just. And you were saying something earlier today about the fact that the pathetic part is there is no one in this guy's life to take him aside.
Yeah,
and say,
and several people were pointing that out on Twitter. He has no wife, mother, girlfriend, sister.
No.
Even guy friend. Uh-huh. He lost Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon said, the way I would have done this show is, and you're like, oh my God. We're done now. Yeah, that's it.
But he's got money and he's got time, and he doesn't realize that he is sailed far, far over the horizon and is never coming back, and is going to be a trivia question in a few years. He will. Other people will come back. Karl Rove is a barnacle who will always survive whatever. But Newt Gingrich is a classic example of someone who just has survived because the cesspool that he lives in was nurtured by the mainstream press. Mm-hmm. But Mike Pillow there's no future for him in anything.
Nope. He has been completely marginalized. Yeah. in part because I think because he does buy his own space.
Yeah.
And then there's no one to tell him, no, you will not mention Dominion at all during this 3-hour thing. And he just doesn't have a filter that protects him from lawsuits. So,
well, and just again, rambling, saying crazy shit, personal complaints, and the whole thing looked like it was knocked together in like 5 hours.
Yep.
You know,
they got the big screen. I was impressed they got the big screen to work. And then we do have to talk about the last thing we have to talk about that is the rando guy from Colorado who came up and said, CNN, you need to cover this and stop fact checking us.
Yeah, I have to write that up because I all of that came down to the most perfect encapsulation of the Republican mind.
Yeah.
I've heard in a long time, which was the CNN, the guy who said, stop fact checking us and just
cover it.
Like, let us spew a lot of bullshit that racist, crazy, conspiratorial, obviously unhinged bullshit, but don't tell us we're wrong or bring facts to the table because that's cheating.
That's hampering our free speech.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's how 70 million of your fellow citizens think. It really is like, I've had this experience before. I've shared it with you. I've talked about it on this podcast where I'm with people here in this town and they're this is pre-Trump, which is why I think it's extremely relevant because they get into some sort of weird bitch session about Hillary and Obama, and I bring some fact to the table, like their own corrupt Republican governor who went to jail, or whatever it was, and they look at me like, "Dude, you're cheating. You're not supposed to remember shit like that." And I just like, well, I guess I don't belong at this table. But it is like such a heartbreaking. Well, why did you say that? Why did you ruin everything with facts?
I was singing a song, man.
And that's how it's like, why are you ruining our good time with facts? Well, because you're fucking up my country.
Yep.
And someone needs to stop you. And that is the least I can do.
We're done. I mean, I am joining people who are just furious.
Yeah.
With non-vaxxed people, with people who think that January 6th wasn't such a big deal, with courts that consider giving January 6th insurrectionists their guns back. I mean, it's no.
No.
And I'm tired of Republicans in general, particularly the 30 Republicans in the Congress and Senate. I guess it was 30 in the Senate that voted against the bipartisan infrastructure deal.
Yeah. The majority of Republicans voted against it.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio voted against it.
Yeah. And Marsha Blackburn voted against it.
Yeah.
And there's others that voted against it. And they should have a big, huge billboard. I don't care if they're up for re-election or not. We need to spend the money for a big, huge billboard by the broken bridge in their state that says your senator, and put a picture of them up, voted no on fixing this bridge.
Well, and since it's appropriate, I'm going to jump down a few notches on our little notes sheet here and talk about something that happened at the Federalist.
Oh.
With Molly Hemingway. A Federalist, I was told by Tom Nichols, was once a fine, respectable publication.
Oh, no.
Used to pay him money to write for them. And then suddenly, without any warning whatsoever, they lost their mind and he had to leave because he's a man of principle who doesn't like looking at the fact the Republican Party has been heading this direction for 20 years. He gets really pissed when people remind him of that. Molly Hemingway got behind the theory that Andrew Cuomo was not taken down over sexual harassment. He was taken down because he was a threat to Kamala Harris running in 2024.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So it's a conspiracy, you see. And this is the Federalist.
So the Democratic Party is trying to pre-select the presidential candidate now.
Yes,
for 2024 by taking out
Andrew Cuomo.
Sex offender Andrew Cuomo.
Right. Because it couldn't just be that he's a sex offender, because then we start talking about what should happen to sex offenders. And then we sort of open the door on the entire Republican Party.
Yeah.
Which is what they don't want to do. But the level of casual derangement and sort of the shrugging off of, well, they're just all crazy and dangerous, aren't they? What are we going to do? Reminded me of a show that you and I watched a few years ago called Babylon Berlin, which is that fascinating period between the world wars. It was Germany during the Weimar Republic in 1929 through whatever. And it's a detective story. There's a detective who is investigating, I think, a murder and gold smuggling. But as a detective, as all of you detective aficionados know, detectives are great because they get to go to every level of society. So you get to meet the rich and the poor and everyone in between, and the street guys and the Baker Street irregulars who are
and
your
the cops.
spies.
They know all the cops and the
cops.
government. Yeah.
And the class structure is exposed with how police treat people and how they treat the cops and who's what. It's a very useful device for exploring a culture. And it struck me so hard then, and it still does, how similar the rise of the right as it exists today is to the rise of fascism in Germany then. Not because they're going to open concentration camps, but because what was going on a really long time. And it took an entire corrupt government, corrupt police, corrupt media, all pretending not to notice what was really going on.
And corrupt corporations.
Oh, and industrialists, who are funding this on the side and pretending it wasn't going on. And now there's no left in this country anywhere near comparable to the communists in 1929 in Germany. And what the average MAGA Republican is going through is zero compared to the deprivations of the working class and the poor.
Oh, people were starving. Yeah.
The Treaty
literally.
of Versailles, post-World War in Germany, there's no comparison.
Yeah.
But here, there are right-wing mobs and militias being directed by political interests who want to overthrow our democracy. And you have businesses and media interests who are willing to finance it. And you have an ultra-wealthy class who are firing rockets into space, who are oblivious to the growing threat because it doesn't affect them in any way. This isn't coming from me. This isn't going to happen to me.
And I really want to know, on January 6th, where was Eric Prince? And who was Eric Prince on the phone with?
Yeah.
Because he's in Dubai right now.
Yep.
And he can't be extradited. And he's not coming back to the United States.
Well,
so something's up with Betsy DeVos's brother.
And all the money
and the money that he has, and his mindset of, I'll just create an army.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that is so maddening to me, that specifically is there are just scenes that I remember from the show where the cop is riding along or investigating something, and you see here's an airstrip where fighter pilots are being trained by someone in Germany who has access to an airstrip and a lot of aircraft when they shouldn't be doing that. And here are private armies being built by disgruntled former military people.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of knows it's happening.
Yeah.
But and this is what it's been like to have been a liberal, frankly, in this country for the last 30 years.
Well, and I thought about that, watching that with the different ways women are portrayed in that show, because there are women who are working class women who are hungry and have nowhere to live and turn to prostitution to survive. And then there are the girlfriends of the police chief or the wealthy women who are just as much prostitutes as the good working class girl who, wants to eat and wants to have a warm place to sleep and turns to that life. But these women bought into it with gusto. And so they get their own place, in the good part of town. And I thought, when I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, it's Callista Gingrich.
Yeah, it really is.
She owns it and goes with gusto after, the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. And ultimately, I couldn't write a novel where a woman like that winds up being ambassador to the Vatican.
No. It would
but that's the level of corruption we're at.
It is.
And Trump put her there because he knew it was her dream job and it would keep Newt Gingrich in line so that he wouldn't go on the Sunday shows where he's always invited and talk shit about Trump.
And that's what's so irritating.
Yeah.
Is that if you listen to Chuck Todd's radio interviews or listen to his early days, he'll tell you up front, yeah, I know they're lying. Yeah, I know they're crazy. I just can't say that because that's not my job. My job isn't to tell you the truth.
Not my job to fact check them while they're on the air.
No. My job is to put them on the air and get guests. That's all I'm here to do. Everyone else thinks this is news. It's not news. My job is to recruit people to get ratings on the show. And if I start asking them hard questions about, their sex life and their corruption and the anti-democratic shit and the crazy shit, they won't come on my show. So I don't ask that shit. That's the part that's so irritating, is that I don't believe a word of it when I hear our allies, our never Trump allies, say they never saw this coming. I don't think they're that stupid. I think they just didn't care. I think they could see the fascists being trained in the courtyard. I think they could see the airstrips. I think they could see the brown shirts in the streets. But those are all means to an end.
Yeah.
Those are all, well, yeah, we have to tolerate these people, but because they win us elections, and that's kind of important.
But it's going to be Rubio. We're in charge of who the nominee is, right?
But we get our tax cuts, and we get Rubio, and we get to, and hating the liberals is how we keep the mob together. So we'll just train them, no matter what the left does, it's evil. I mean, remember, all of your allies stuck with Mitch McConnell during the entire Obama administration. Right. During the entire time when the Republican Party was trying overtly to destroy Barack Obama, was denying him seats on the Supreme Court, all of the people who are now our allies were cool with that because that was all a means to an end.
They're still supporting Ted Cruz, blocking all the State Department appointees. That nobody's making the story about that.
And so the building of the brown shirt mob on the right was perfectly okay with them. They just sort of they just looked away like, well, this isn't really who we are. This is just a minority. And we were screaming at them, no, this is your party. These people are coming for you. They hate everything about you. They don't give a shit about tax cuts. They want to burn the country down and have a fascist theocracy run by a strong man who will tell them what to do. What is it about your own advertising, your own appeals to them that you don't understand? And now it's like these people are like, oh my God, this came as a complete shock. And that isn't the hard part. The hard part is them giving shit to the people who were telling them all along that this is what you should worry about. That I can't tolerate that. I can't stand that because it really is, a little fucking humility, man. A little fucking, you know what? Here's the thing. Mike's blog Roundup was right all along. Steve Gilliard was right all along. Digby was right all along. Let's give them some fucking respect for being willing to be out there risking everything to warn us back when we were making a living shitting on them. But those people don't even exist in their universe. They are faultless. They didn't do anything wrong. And now they're just, they come late to the party to say, hey, you know what? We got to all get together and fight these Republicans because they're pretty bad. Yeah, that's that's great revelation, dude. That's wonderful. But the time to intervene was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And now
and speaking of being off the wagon and, eating your own, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell an Illinois story that happened yesterday.
Please.
We had a visitor in Illinois, Dan Crenshaw, Republican of Texas. He was at a fundraiser up in the Chicagoland area for the Republican Senate or whatever he was fundraising for, Republicans. And a U.S. Senate candidate who I've never heard of before, named Bobby Pitton. Bobby Pitton has never held office, and he is a portfolio manager, Driftglass. But he found his 15 minutes of fame last night because he went all shouty crackers at Dan Crenshaw. Pitton is clearly hoping to win the ride or die Trump contingent, win the Republican nomination to the U.S. Senate, and then lose to Tammy Duckworth in 2022 because that is literally the best he can hope for is getting the nomination. And given that at this point, I, as an Illinoisan, have never heard of this guy, I think he's there to shit talk other Republicans. Anyway, he's a portfolio manager, has never held public office. He insisted at this fundraiser, yelling and with a cell phone to Dan Crenshaw, that he knows the 2020 election was faked. And of course, he took his video, where this rhino, and actually Pitton called Dan Crenshaw a secret Democrat.
Yeah.
Crenshaw said, no, look, it's over. 2020 election is over. We're really focused on 2022 and 2024. 2020 is over. The YouTube description that Dan Pitton put up it's many sentences long, and it's worth the click for hilarity. He said he literally this is quote, literally combed through millions of election voter data in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and several other states himself. Personally. He did that. And he was actually in Arizona where the recount was happening. So he knows. So that happened in Illinois. And I just hate it when daddy and daddy fight. Don't you, Driftglass?
Well, and what's the worst thing you can call someone on the right?
A Democrat.
And where do they learn that the worst, most potent, most destructive epithet you can throw at a fellow member of your party is liberal or Democrat. They learned
Fox
it from
News and Hate Radio.
Fox News, Hate Radio, and Newt Gingrich. How long has this been going on? How
1994.
How many years did Charlie Sykes make a living on the radio doing exactly this shit? And so you've created a group that binds your party together in their common hatred of the caricature of the left.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And where did you think this was going to lead? This is honestly, I don't want to yell at these people. I don't want to scream at them, but I would like to ask the question: where did you think this was going?
Well, Drift Class,
where did you think
I want to give you
going?
5 minutes on Tom Nichols and Andrew Sullivan.
Oh, well, in the old school blogger universe, Andrew Sullivan and I were the last winners of the Blogger of the Year award. Mm-hmm. Back in 2000 and something. Andrew Sullivan is a famous internet quitter, what we used to call an internet quitter. He quit blogging and said he would never blog again, and then he started blogging again. He moved to New York, and then he quit New York and called New York a shithole and hated everyone there and moved from there. And then he got a gig at New York Magazine and quit that. And he now has burrowed into Substack and is apparently making a fine living at Substack. And he is famous for his horribly wrong opinions and his passionate sort of hysteria about things that you shouldn't be hysterical about.
Well, he also believes in the bell curve guy and some really shitty opinions about race.
Well,
and he's a Tory who had never really understood what race in America is about.
He has an imaginary version of America locked in his head as a Brit come to this country. Very privileged. The minute he landed here, it was all the doors were open for him because he was a conservative from across the pond where Margaret Thatcher was running things, who loved Ronald Reagan and could write. He's a good writer. And so he has been Peter principled far beyond his level of competence long ago. Now, people like that should flame out and go away. He was absolutely right about gay marriage, and he should receive full marks for that. But he was wrong about the Iraq War and wrong about Sarah Palin's baby and wrong about the left and wrong about a whole lot of things that are really important, but mostly about race. Can't get it through his head that we had a civil war in this country, much less there was Jim Crow in this country. He just can't do it. And so anytime you bring up the problem of race in this country, you're a crazy liberal leftist socialist lunatic who wants to slap speech codes on everyone and make him stop doing whatever he wants to do. So, by all rights, he should have disappeared a long time ago. But the thing about that generation of blogger / writer on the right is they collected a lot of people's contact information. Mm-hmm. So he makes the rounds regularly. He shows up here, he shows up there. He's a regular on the Bill Maher show, and now he's got a book out. Now I didn't realize you could do this, but he's taken a whole bunch of old blog posts and stitched them together and called it a book. And I didn't realize you could do that. So my next book is coming out called Bang the Dumb Slowly, and I fully expect the same red carpet treatment from liberal MSNBC that Andrew Sullivan's gotten.
I can't wait to meet Brian Williams in the green room.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going out to drinks with Rachel Maddow is what I'm shooting for, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, I one night I look up and there's Brian Williams on MSNBC commiserating with Andrew Sullivan about the horrible woke left. Isn't it a tragedy that the left is so woke and they're so woke-ish and you can't even say anything anymore? It's such a tragedy. And Andrew Sullivan is now fully both sides do it. He knows where the money is. So it's like, yeah, the right pissed me off and they kicked me out, but the left hates me too, so I must be doing something right. Wow. Tom Friedman couldn't have said that better 25 years ago. You've just described David Brooks' entire career, and that's really where he sits now. Why he's still anywhere, I don't understand. But, okay, Brian Williams, I can't watch this. I'm turning it off. Next morning or the day after, I look out at Morning Joe Scarborough. Hey, look, it's Andrew Sullivan. He's being interviewed by Joe Scarborough, and they're commiserating about, the left and the woke left. And I found out that Ronald Reagan was a fucking saint, and that both sides got the Iraq War wrong, which is a exciting new development. I wasn't aware of that.
Somebody needs to tell Digby.
No, the scales fell from my eyes. And I looked over my shoulder, and there he was on the Megyn Kelly podcast, complaining about the woke left. Look, it's the woke left, and the woke left, and the woke left. And he's figured out exactly what every other wingnut has figured out, what every never-Trumper has figured out, that the real money is kicking liberals, bashing people like you and me, blaming us for everything that's going wrong. Sure, the Republican Party's nuts, but look at those woke lefts who are doing the wrong thing.
Well, and so what is the race and gender of the person that buys Andrew Sullivan's book?
Gender is male, race is white.
Yeah. And they want to think of themselves as intellectual, or,
Sure.
They're college educated white men who don't like taxes, who have hunted on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
They're not gun nuts, but they don't like government, but they do like the fact that their mother her nursing home is paid for by the government. I mean, it's a delusion.
Well,
and it sells books.
Andrew Sullivan lives in a 12 square block area of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally he sort of darts out to a vacation home or goes to New York. Mm-hmm. But Andrew Sullivan doesn't know anything about this country that hasn't been filtered through his extremely privileged, rarefied lifestyle. And therefore, it is incomprehensible to him that race is an actual problem in this country that has just never gone away. And it's built into our institutions, and it's built into our attitude. But I think it's
worse than that. I think he sees I think deep down inside, he sees the natural superior, and I mean that in a scientific sense, the natural superiority of people like Andrew Sullivan.
Oh, yes. Clearly, he's got a very 19th century phrenological view of the racial structures.
Right.
And with Andrew Sullivan and people like him at the top who are naturally, and this brings me to Tom Nichols, not the race part, but the sense of entitled superiority when everything about you has been fucking wrong. Tom Nichols also has a book out, and it's also about how everyone's an idiot except me. And because he is normally thin-skinned about people reminding him of the past and will bite your head off on social media if you bring that up. Now he's on book tour. So he's extremely sensitive. He's extremely, even more than usual, of people bringing the past up. So he lit into a bunch of people a couple of days ago on Twitter about, I'm not interested in dumb comments like they were always like this, or you just didn't notice it, or any of that crap. So that's the line. Mm-hmm. It is Tom Nichols, who was dead fucking wrong about the one thing he is now being paid to opine about, a guy who celebrates expertise and is being marketed as an expert in the one thing he clearly doesn't know shit about. Has to be a very uncomfortable.
So he blocks everybody who reminds him of that, and then says, "Money, please."
Yes, and that's again. This is the. I don't care. Take people like me out of the equation. If you let someone who says they were not like this, I'm right, everyone who disagrees with me is an idiot, let me have all the spotlight and money. Mm-hmm. Guess what the conversation is going to be about 5 years from now? It's not going to be about the genuine deconstruction of the right as a failed political and economic idea going back 50 years.
Nope.
It's going to be, there was this moment, this blip on the radar when this crazy man came along and miraculously transformed 70 million people into racist morons, but it had nothing to do with me, had nothing to do with the
and it doesn't have anything to do with the party structure of Republican politics either.
It has nothing to do with the fact these people have been making money shitting on liberals for 30 years, calling us baby-killing monsters for 30 years, that's their mother tongue. Nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with the fact that people like Tom profited from that all that time. Mm-hmm. And that once it all fell apart, Tom Nichols is too big a fucking coward to admit that he got it wrong. Because if he admits, shit, the one thing I'm on this goddamn TV talking about is the one thing I don't know about, there goes his whole I'm an expert and you're a bunch of idiots shtick, which is all he has. That is his whole thing. And it is maddening to me that, not that people make this argument. I don't care that he makes the argument. I'm furious that the media ecosystem that gave us the Iraq War and gave us George W. Bush still believes it is their job to protect people like Tom and people like Andrew from any criticism from anywhere.
Right.
And keep them very careful.
And we're just going to go back to it again.
Right. Because we need to get back to a day when Tom Nichols and Andrew Sullivan dominated the media. Their voices are the voices you hear as the reasonable center. And that's when you get a President Tom Cotton. Yes, that's exactly right. And that is what I am.
We're trying to prevent that from happening.
Really, really trying. We really are. And it's only because I can see what's going to happen 5 years from now if it is permitted, if we're allowed to lie about how we got here.
Right.
And if the lie becomes...
And they're trying really, really hard to lie about January 6th.
Yeah.
And they're trying really, really hard to make this about Hunter Biden or, immigration. They're trying to make COVID about immigration.
Yeah.
And it's working.
Yeah.
On the right. It's working.
This is the part where this is the oasis, the illusion, the mirage of cooperation. Every one of these people and I all agree that this sort of talk on the right is insane.
Mm-hmm.
They will not agree that the reason that people got this way is because of a very, very, very long road down which they have traveled, which people like Tom and Charles and the rest of them all paved for them.
Yeah.
And that the reason
the race is a huge part of that.
Yes.
White nationalism is a huge part of that.
Well, and the reason they're permitted to continue is they're allowed to continue to forget what they said yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
That memory is that the past is off limits. And if you put people as the voice of the resistance who agree that beyond 2016, we're not going to talk about how we got here. It's like, oh, we're not going to talk about what caused World War II. We're not going to talk about the Treaty of Versailles.
Right.
We're not going to talk
That's
about
all the past.
That's all in the past. We're not going to talk about the precursors. We're not going to talk about German industrialists. We're not going to talk about corrupt police. All of that is in the past, so it doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so you want to wait until the tanks are rolling across Poland to start talking about the threat these people pose.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's what happened.
That's exactly what happened. We don't want to look at that. We don't want to deal with that. We don't want to believe that, oh my God, what happened?
Right.
Why weren't we warned? Well, you were amply warned. And that's fine. That's all in the past now.
5 years and millions of lives later, you were lucky enough to get the bomb first and defeat Hitler in Europe. Yeah.
And all I want for Christmas is for the thing that the right keeps doing, that even our allies keep doing, which is lying about the past, becomes something you cannot do in public anymore.
Right. Right.
And because if lying about the past is okay for our allies and the bad guys, where does that leave anybody who doesn't want to lie about the past, who wants to get to actually the root of the problem and fix it? Mm-hmm. It never happens. We just go through the cycle over and over again, and it gets worse every time. And you're right. It's President Tom Cotton.
And I just want to say, I'm very fearful after this week about the level of lead in some people's water.
Yeah.
Watching those parents, so quote unquote parents in Tennessee, screaming at doctors as they left a school board meeting. Insane, rabid, drummed up, insane people in a parking lot screaming at doctors and threatening them. And I just got to wonder, what is in your drinking water that you're behaving that way?
Well, what's in your drinking water or what's on your TV?
And what's on your TV is obvious. We've got to move on to News Roundup.
Well, let's do. Why don't you just step right up and tell us what's going on, Blue Gal?
The Bidening continues. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the U.S. economy created. Our favorite New York Times columnist, Paul Krugman, said, "I will not focus on job numbers. I will not focus on job numbers. I will not focus on job numbers."
Right.
But this was pretty impressive, is what he said.
Yeah.
943,000 new jobs in July.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And the unemployment rate dropped to its lowest point since the start of the pandemic. I can tell you from my own experience with our teenagers that they are falling right in that groove of being very picky about where they're going to work.
Yeah.
And junior dude is making $18.50 an hour out in Washington State, doing menial work, but with room for advancement if he wants to stay there. I don't think he does. I think he wants to go on to do more schooling, but there's that. Youngest child said, "I'm never working in food again."
Yeah. So now she's going to learn how to hate retail just as much. She's going to
hate retail as much as she hates the restaurant industry.
Well,
and, middle child's going off to college next week. So
labor has power now. And I know that the jobs report is real because all of those people were in line at the restaurant ahead of us when we tried to get there,
right?
With their brand new money,
right.
So and I'm glad to see. I am so glad to see restaurants booming.
Yes,
I'm so glad to see people have jobs. The part that one of the things that really does bug me is the whole liberals want to drag the economy down. Liberals want us to lock down forever. I know I can't change the messaging because that messaging is in a bubble and the bubble is impregnable. But it really does delight me to go see local businesses doing well.
Right.
That makes me happy. I'm thrilled to see restaurants with waiting lines and most people in masks. I am thrilled to see the state fair open this week. It scared the shit out of me that we had Lollapalooza. That was a stupid idea. But
everyone was vaccinated at Lollapalooza. At least they were checking. So yeah,
that's what they said. So in a week we'll know for sure. This week, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is now the former governor Andrew Cuomo. This week he announced that he's stepping down from his job to spend more time on CNN with his family.
Well, and he stepped down the very day that Ronan Farrow had an article coming out about him. Which timing, I think, yes. And he said he's retiring. He's resigning in 2 weeks, like he has another job to go to.
Right. He's giving 2 weeks notice just to be nice. But he's got this other job. I just the ego. How long till he shows up at CNN?
Oh, by 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis may be having second thoughts about his strategy of boosting his popularity by getting lots of people killed. The federal government sent ventilators to Florida, but Ron DeSantis says he was unaware of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Now, across the Gulf, another Republican governor in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, has started asking for out-of-state help in dealing with the massive COVID outbreak in Texas that he helped to create. He and corrupt Texas AG Ken Paxton are also at the same time challenging a Dallas County judge's order mandating masks in schools and businesses. So they really are doing it both ways. They're begging for help from the outside world to help them with a problem they created. And then they're continuing with the policies that created the problem, which I think qualifies you as a failed state.
Absolutely. If you're building hospital space in 2021 with a vaccine in existence and you have to build hospital space in a parking lot, you're failed. You failed as the governor.
Well, this is the same state that, the electric grid collapsed.
Right.
But the priority was...
like 4 months ago.
Yeah. But the priority was building a chunk of a shitty wall that will never stop anyone from going anywhere.
Yeah. And raising money and trying to steal land to do that. I mean, the grid failed in January, so that was 7 months ago.
Yep. While Ted Cruz is in Cancun.
Texas better not forget that. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure they don't.
Well, and it occurred to me that this week, Afghanistan is falling faster than we thought.
Yeah.
And it occurs to me that the Afghan dilemma is the same as the red state dilemma, which is short of a massive military occupation of Texas and Florida and the rest of them, forcing them to behave like decent citizens. It's up to them to do what they're going to do with their own state.
Right.
And, we can't save them from themselves. We can't save them from their own inherent cultural failures.
Well, apparently we are. Apparently we are sending military task forces of doctors to those failed states.
Oh no, we can help them with their
set
plague.
Up regional, MASH units. We're setting up MASH units is what we're doing.
We can do that, but we cannot save them from their own failed culture. We cannot save Texas from Texans. We can't save Florida from Floridians. The reason
and
they
we
have,
know a lot of good people in Texas.
We do.
And I pray for them. I really do.
But the reason that Governor Abbott in Texas exists and Governor DeSantis in Florida exists is because the voters of those states voted for them.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to tell people who live there, and who won't listen to anyone telling them. And so, again, short of massive military intervention, there's nothing we can do to save Florida from the Floridians.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people in Florida that stay home.
Oh yeah, no,
elections and are at the beach or don't get into politics and don't, maybe you want to think about that next time there's an election coming up. Who'd you kill today, Ron DeSantis? Yeah. Hey, Ron, we need to come up with a chant, right?
Yeah.
How many?
I'll workshop it. I'll have it next week by our next show.
All right. Meanwhile, in the great state of Illinois, with our butter cow, the best governor in the United States of America. And I say that without hesitation. J.B. Pritzker expanded the Family and Medical Leave Act to include thousands of educational support professionals, all those aides for special needs kids, all those people that work in schools who are not in the teachers union, they now have family and medical leave thanks to J.B. Pritzker.
Yep. I don't know what to tell you. It's night and day. If you cannot see,
every week he's doing something progressive to make Illinois better. And our friend Steve upstate has been DMing us on Twitter with, there's a new plant that's going to open up in middle of Illinois.
Yeah.
And there's another plant that's going to open up, and that's going to be 2,300 jobs. And he keeps saying, and nobody wants to move to Illinois because the taxes are so high. It's
Yeah, every, just FYI, this is Illinois tradition. Every bitter asshole, former state employee Republican who moves to Florida or Indiana says, I can't stand the socialist state and its high taxes no more. And they leave. To like states that are, having plague sweeping over them or have free gun handouts at the borders. This is what they want. And I don't know how to, again, save them from themselves. There's no reaching these people.
But when you have stable, insured, and educated workers in your state and a government that is clearly united and willing to pass regulations that make sense, companies want to move here.
Yeah. As I used to tell people during my many years in workforce development, the reason Chicago was the candy capital of the world was not because we have all the sugar or the chocolate in the world. It's because we had the best workers in the world. There were so many candy companies here. There was a critical mass of trained, competent, capable workers who could work in that industry. So if you're a company looking to relocate, you look for a workforce that can do the job you need them to do. And that's number one consideration. Everything else is negotiable, but if you don't have a workforce that can do the job, nobody wants to come near you.
Yep.
Unless you work in an expendable industry where you don't give a shit if your workers live or die. Meanwhile, north of us, Quebec is going to ban the unvaccinated from bars, gyms, restaurants, and public events. The Quebec government is expected to institute a ban, which they hope will help stop a fourth wave of COVID-19 at the start of September. So, look around the world and see what other civilized countries are doing and notice that, we're not doing those things because of freedom.
California is the first state to require teachers and school staff to be vaccinated against the coronavirus or submit to regular testing in order to return to school.
Yeah. By a 50-49 party line vote, this week the Senate adopted a budget framework that begins the process for Democrats' $3.5 trillion human infrastructure spending plan. This was the necessary first step to using the budget reconciliation process to pass the actual bill, a process which would require only a simple majority vote. The next step is that the House will adopt the same framework, and then the various committees will start working on the actual legislation, which Democrats hope to pass this fall. All of the goofy stuff, the weird stuff, the one-off stuff you heard people voting on this week, that was during the vote-a-rama for this framework, where you get to throw amendments up in the air and have people vote or not vote on. This is when Republicans try to embarrass Democrats for trying to save the country from Republicans.
Dominion announced this week that they're suing Newsmax and One America News and a couple of their personalities, their on-air personalities as well.
Joe Manchin was the lone Democrat to vote in favor of Tom Cotton's federal ban on critical race theory.
Lord. You read this next one because you wrote it, and you wrote it well.
Well, thank you. Famous weasel-haired libertarian famously does not understand the Constitution. Rand Paul has been suspended from YouTube, which apparently is now the government, for a week following his insane borderline murderous rant about face masks. Reached for comment, Paul said in a statement issued by his office, quote, I think this kind of censorship is very dangerous, incredibly anti-free speech, and truly anti-progress of science, which involves skepticism and argumentation to arrive at the truth. Everything about this is wrong. First of all, science is not about skepticism and argumentation. It's about experimentation and demonstration. Like, no one is still arguing that the earth is flat. Well, there are people who are doing that, but they're crazy people. No one is still arguing that the earth is the center of the universe, except for a few lunatics who are probably Republicans. These are established scientific facts that no one is arguing about because no one in their right mind can refute the evidence. Second, YouTube is not the government. YouTube is a private company that can put you on or not put you on The same way if you came into my house and started spouting bullshit, I have the right to throw you out. So,
well, and I think we can make an argument about these places, these online places being the public square.
yeah.
But conservatives have argued that places like shopping malls are private businesses.
Right.
And that people can't leaflet. Liberals can't leaflet in those places because they're privately owned. So you don't get to have it both ways.
Well, believe me, if social media were the government, a certain blogger wouldn't have been permanently banned for life for calling someone trash on one of the platforms.
Right.
So it's a private company. It can throw me off or anyone else, whatever it wants to. And the idea that super libertarian Rand Paul doesn't Rand Paul doesn't understand science on which libertarianism is supposed to be based, on logic. It's logic, and don't let your emotions cloud, the logical outcomes. He doesn't understand science. He doesn't understand government. The two things, this fake optometrist who's a senator doesn't understand science or government, which tells you a lot about the people of Kentucky, honestly. That the other senator they have there is Mitch McConnell. So again, there are just certain states in this country where not everyone, but the majority of people who go to the polls and elect people are reckless, irresponsible assholes who need to be treated like a hostile third world country.
A Texas judge blocked the arrest of Democratic legislators who fled the state to stop the GOP from imposing new voting restrictions. Meanwhile, another judge then reinstated that.
Yeah.
So Texas, we need, again, I'm praying for Texas. I
am too. I want all of my fellow citizens, no matter how dumb fuck they are, to have clean air and clean water, good schools, and affordable health care. I want that for everybody. I don't just want it for us. Here's the thing, Blue Gal. I have never heard a liberal or a lefty or a Democrat say, let's do this horribly shitty thing just to own the conservatives.
No, we don't say that.
This is not a thing we do. We do things on the left because we think it would be good for the country, not because it would just piss off some asshole.
Not that it isn't fun to piss off conservatives.
No, but if everyone just stopped trying to piss people off and focused on policy, you would notice that the right has no policies for anything. Republicans are terrible
at policy.
They have nothing. There's nothing there. There's nothing left of the GOP but hating people like you and me. Nothing. And
really?
The fact that, again, a lot of us were trying to tell our allies this 20 years ago, and they laughed and scoffed and said, don't worry about it. I don't know what to tell you other than you should listen to the people who were right all along.
There was no Republican platform in 2020.
No.
There wasn't one.
Well, I look back to an earlier time. Remember the earlier time, the good old days when Republicans were reasonable and they had policies that were wonderful? In local news, as we alluded to before, the Illinois State Fair Butter Cow has been unveiled. This is the 100th anniversary of the Illinois State Fair. And it is proceeding.
And the butter cow is a big deal, people.
It is. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. It's a big deal. Well, because it's an agrarian festival.
Right.
It's about livestock and it's about produce and it's about 4-H.
And it is a life-size cow made of butter. So get with it.
Deal with it. Just deal with it. This is the 100th anniversary of the State Fair.
Yeah.
And it's proceeding with some mask mandates and other cautions, which are prudent and wise. And I thank the governor for making those rules. Now, you want to talk about the education thing? This is kind of a long piece, but I think it's kind of important.
Sure. Superintendents around the state of Illinois received a letter Wednesday from the Illinois State Board of Education. Superintendent of Education Carmen Ayala. In the letter, Ayala addresses Governor J.B. Pritzker's mandate for masks at all schools in Illinois from pre-kindergarten to 12th grade. She says local schools do not have the authority to refuse to comply with the governor's executive order on universal masking. However, non-compliance is not an option. I will not compromise the health and safety of students or staff, nor will I risk even one child's life. Local boards of education, schools, and school districts do not have the authority to deny the governor's executive order requiring universal indoor masking in schools. Doing so not only puts students' health and safety at risk, but also opens the district to extraordinary legal liability, potentially without any insurance to cover damages. I strongly recommend that each district consult with its legal counsel and insurer to fully understand the repercussions. It's going to be on you, local school boards, if you want to be assholes about this.
Mm-hmm.
Further, The Illinois State Board of Education has and will use its regulatory authority pursuant to 23.3 Admin Code 120 to ensure school districts protect students and staff. If school districts fail to do so, this risks state recognition. So you can lose your license.
Money. You lose your money. They'll stop funding you. This really is as close to as you're going to hear bureaucrats say, I will come down on you like the wrath of God if you continue to fuck with us and tell us that we don't have to have mask up our students.
And it's going to be your liability, not the state's. That should get a lot of attention.
It'll be your liability and you will lose funding. So, go right ahead.
Luck.
So fuck around and find out is basically what you're saying.
Find out. I think that's what she was saying. Yeah. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Coco. Coco is a lovely kitty who in this photo is allegedly considering a run for governor, not from Illinois, though.
No.
And of course, Coco eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Direct, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured. And you can visit Coco at our Facebook page or website. And you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, sheep, goat, butter cow, or other pet, fish, everything. Send us a picture to our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. Please put kitty, Kitty, in the subject line. And you can also write to both of us at that address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service, go Postal Unions, letter on the air unless you say otherwise. #FireDeJoy. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity, this is our job, and it's a labor of love. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution. You can too. And I wanted to say we got a modest check from one of our listeners this week that had a Post-it note on it that said, "Great show."
That was it.
And that's all you need to do. I think some people get perfectionism blocks them a little bit from writing to us. And don't let perfectionism stop you from sending us money.
Right.
That's all I have to say. Just put a little Post-it note on there saying, "Love you, great show, thank you, I listen every week," or whatever. And slap it on a check made out to the Professional Left Podcast.
There is nothing as eloquent as a check made out to Professional Left Podcast.
There's nothing as eloquent as a check. Or you can visit our website, proleftpod.com, for details. We have PayPal, our postal address information, of course, and buy me a coffee. There's merch. It's all there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on social media, and thank you so much for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are planning their own 3-day cat treat symposium featuring 2 hours of symposiuming and 70 hours of napping.
Let's think about living. Let's think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the whine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left Podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2021 DGBG Productions. Thank you, Driftglass.
You're
now
welcome,
I'm
Blue
going
Gal.
to look up Governor's Day at the fair.
Yes. This is the part that we should take to the Substack because this is the part people will pay. People will pay to listen to this part.
All right. So, as promised, here's what's going on at the fair. You've got at 8 a.m. the Open Spotted Swine Show in the Swine Barn.
Yeah.
At 9 a.m. in the Hobbies, Arts, and Crafts building, there's a culinary contest for the main dish using pork. So be prepared to eat a main dish using pork at 9 in the morning. That's on Wednesday.
That's a breakfast of champions right there, my friend.
10 a.m. bingo in the Illinois building. Also at 10 a.m., if you're not into bingo, at the Hobbies, Arts, and Crafts building, the 2020 Herb of the Year Challenge. Well, we all know what the Herb of the Year in Illinois is.
We're pretty sure that taxes on the Herb of the Year in Illinois are paying for the state fair.
Yeah, it's the Herb of the Decade, let me tell you. Then we've got the New Jerusalem Singers at 11. Also at 11, the USDA Beagle Brigade in the Department of Ag tent.
Mm-hmm.
The Illinois Fire Museum will be putting on a show called Arson Dogs.
Yeah. I think that's like the Suicide Squad, but with dogs. Not sure.
I don't understand that. Arson Dogs.
Arson Dogs.
12:30 in the Department of Agriculture tent. It's Meet the Farmer. The Farmer. I guess they only had one.
Yeah.
1 p.m., the Junior Holstein Show. Now, that's really important because that's about the kids. The kids have raised their own cow, and you have to be under a certain age in order to present your cow at the livestock building at 1 on Wednesday.
And just to be very clear, we are not making fun of this at all. I was a member of 4-H for 2 years when I was much, much younger. It is a big thing here. And the kids here get an enormous amount out of it.
I will not make fun of children that are doing this kind of work. It's a lot of work. It means a lot to them. Absolutely.
It does. And they learn a lot of really valuable stuff. So
they will learn skills in presentation and caring for animals. It's a wonderful thing. Yep. Mm-hmm. 1:30, Swifty Swine Pig Racing.
Now, I will make fun of that because if you're featuring pork cooking a few hours earlier, we know what the pigs are running from. We know what their motivation is. Keep up, Wilbur.
Yeah.
You're not that beloved, Wilbur. You're not that great. Babe, I'm sorry. You've had a good run, but...
At 2:00, you have a choice between the Jetpack Flying Water Circus, open milking...
Yeah.
That's at the Livestock Center.
That's the political contribution tent. So, yeah.
Or Maverick Moon belly dancing in the Illinois building. I'm not making any of this up.
Sure. Why would you make that up? How would you make that up?
How would I make that up? There's music throughout the fair.
Yeah.
And at 3:00, you can choose between the Bygones and the Dulcimer guy.
I'd go for the Dulcimer guy.
Yeah, I would too.
One of the finest afternoons I spent at a bar in Chicago was when a guy came in with a hammered dulcimer in a bag and just took it out and played the shit out of that thing. And we were all it was a miracle. Mm-hmm. And he bagged up, had CDs to sell, and he left. And it was this like miraculous moment. I go see dulcimers, man. The people, the rest of these, the Bygoners, screw those guys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
And then at 5, you can see a, hair band from Ireland called Def Leprechaun.
Yeah, okay.
I guess I'll leave it at that. So, wait. At the Miller Life tent at 5, Captain Geach and the Shrimp Shack Shooters.
Yeah, there you go. I think...
So, there's a lot going on at the fair. That's what I have to say.
I want to invite Charlie Pierce to go see Def Leprechaun with me.
I think there's something there with that Def Leprechaun. Maybe you'd look those guys up.
Well, and they're going to have George Thorogood there and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night would be a big deal.
Vanilla Ice will be there. Is that true?
Vanilla Ice is in the I Love the 90s tour. Yes, and that is on Wednesday also. Yeah.
So this is the state fair. This is not a county fair.
The reason we looked up Wednesday is because the state fair has a Republican day and a Democratic Party day. And but because the governor is a Democrat, it's called Governor's Day.
That's right.
But as they note in the program notes, Governor Pritzker attends much of the Illinois State Fair, not just Governor's Day.
No, he's right behind you.
He was there for the butter cow.
Yeah. Well, he's like Waldo. You gotta look for him. You gotta spot him. He's there somewhere.
And I gotta tell you, this is a short drive from our house. This is on the other side of town. It's on the north side of town. But we do live walking distance from a cornfield. We are not making that up.
And we have... I have dropped the girls off at the state fair for a few years.
Many years. Yeah. They like to go on the Ferris wheel and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. So I love you, darling.
Love you, Jiff Glass. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.